Up to this point, I've been doing my card reviews chronologically, and I got through like 40 or 50 cards or so. But now that the whole set's out, it probably makes more sense to start going by class. I'm not gonna re-review the 40 or so that I've already done, unless I have like some updated thought on them seeing the full set now. So if you want to see that, there's like 3 previous videos you can look at. But anyway, we're going to start with the Demon Hunter, and with Demon Hunter we're going to start with Tuskpiercer. So this is a weapon, 1 mana 1/2, Death Rattle, draw a Death Rattle minion. So this is a pretty powerful weapon. We have seen in the past with Umberwing that a 1/2 weapon in Demon Hunter is just kind of fine because they can use their hero power to make it deal 2 damage if you really need to. And they have other buffs to play around with, so the stat line on this weapon is fine. And the effect on it's very good too. Draw a Death Rattle minion. In particular, I think it's really nice with this card that you can play it on 1, attack with it, and then turn 2 you attack with it again, and if you draw a 2 mana Death Rattle you can just play it immediately. So it's a 1-drop that gives you a 2-drop. Historically, things like that have tended to be pretty good. But what Death Rattles are we actually playing? If we look at the stuff in the game right now, it's all pretty underwhelming. Like, Renowned Performer's not a terrible card. We go to neutrals, most of this stuff is rotating. There's like Thalnos and Loot Hoarder, but Demon Hunter already has really good card draw. Although, I mean, I guess this is like, this draws into another draw, which could be good for a combo deck or something. Not that I think the Il'gynoth deck could necessarily afford to play that package, but I guess it's cute. You can maybe play Rustsworn Initiate. That's a 2 mana Death Rattle that curves after this. 1 mana 1/2 weapon that draws a 2 mana 3/3 sort of. And it's not like spell damage is irrelevant in Demon Hunter. Could be okay. Probably don't want to play Showstoppers. Sneaky Delinquents, like, okay. Maybe, I don't know, like all this stuff looks pretty sketchy, I would say. I certainly don't think you're going as big as Claw Machine off this. So yeah, the Death Rattles off this look pretty sketchy. There are a handful of Death Rattles being introduced in this set that we could potentially play. These, I believe, are all the Death Rattle cards in the set. We've got the Razorboar that we're going to talk about in a second, the Razorfin Beastmaster that we saw. Those are obviously cards that you'd want to be drawing into. There's the Death's Head Cultist, this one over here. That could be something worth drawing into. And then we've got these bigger ones that have some synergy with the other Demon Hunter Death Rattle minions as well. So even though the current set of Death Rattles doesn't look super good, there is a lot of incentive to play the Tuskpiercer with the stuff that's coming out of Forged in the Barrens. As far as stuff in the core set goes, they are reintroducing Nerubian Egg that you could also draw into. There's Explosive Sheep that maybe, depending on your archetype, could be good. Maybe that's like some weird combo package. You play the Explosive Sheeps with the Loot Hoarders or something. I don't know, seems kind of sketchy. There's also the 5 mana 3/3 Divine Shield Death Rattle thing that draws the biggest minion in your deck. That card's probably pretty good. So yeah, there actually is quite a lot of good stuff to draw into with the Tuskpiercer. I don't know if you're going like full Death Rattle Demon Hunter, but even if you're not, you only need, I don't know, 4 Death Rattles or something to play a couple copies of this. That sounds pretty doable, even if you're not going all the way in. So yeah, next up we have to talk about the Razorboar, of course, something that you can draw with the Tuskpiercer. 2 mana 2/2 Death Rattle. Summon a Death Rattle minion that costs 3 or less from your hand. So this is obviously almost the exact same text as the Beastmaster that I've previously reviewed. Just this summons 3 or less, that summoned 4 or less. Yeah, very similar cards, obviously. So the dream, of course, is that maybe you even draw this off Tuskpiercer, but then you play this on turn 2, it summons the Beastmaster, and then the Beastmaster summons Renowned Performer, or the Dark Spear Berserker, or whatever 4 mana Death Rattle thing you have. But it does seem like we're committing a lot of deck slots to this at this point. You know, 2 weapons, 2 Razorboar, 2 Beastmaster, I guess 2 of the 4 drops. You're probably playing like Renowned Performer as well. Maybe you are also playing Death's Head Cultist, the 3-mana 2/4 taunt, Death Rattle heal thing. So yeah, like that's a lot of deck slots, and if you're playing all that stuff, maybe it's hard to just like play Battle Fiend, and you know, you probably need some card draw or whatever. So I don't really know how I feel about going all in on this Death Rattle stuff, even though in theory you can hit some pretty nasty chains of minions. Like even with the Dream Razorboar into Beastmaster into 4-drop, you are still losing 3 cards from your hand to do all that. Now maybe that's offset because of Demon Hunter's really strong card draw, but it is still a little bit sketchy, I think. But the more I thought about it, maybe you don't actually have to go that hard with Death Rattle Demon Hunter. Maybe you just play 2 boars and 2 beast tamers, and they just summon each other if you have a couple copies of them. And then, like with that, maybe you play a couple, like a couple other Death Rattles, maybe the 4-mana 5/7, maybe the taunt thing. But like, I don't know if you necessarily need to dedicate like half your deck to this Death Rattle stuff. You just have a small package of them. Sometimes they have payoff and it's like pretty good, sometimes they don't, and I don't know, you're not too happy about it, but you're not too upset about it either, I would say. But even though I can like kind of see this coming together, I don't really feel too inspired by this. Like, I don't know if Death Rattle Demon Hunter is better than Soul Fragments, I don't know if it's better than Lifesteal. I don't know if it's better than playing Battle Fiend on turn 1, and then just, I think we lose Umberwing, but, you know, the typical stuff that Demon Hunter's done over the last year. I don't know, though. There's a lot of room to play around with these cards, different Death Rattle minions that can go in and out, different amounts of Death Rattles you want to commit to the deck. It is a bit interesting. But obviously, if we're talking about Death Rattle Demon Hunter, we have to talk about the legendary as well. Deathspeaker Blackthorn. 7-mana 3/6 Battlecry, summon 3 Death Rattle minions that cost 5 or less from your deck. So, I mean, if we look at all these Death Rattles, we have previously just mostly looked at ones that cost 4 or less because of the Beast Tamer and the Razorboar. But this lets us go up to 5. But it doesn't really seem like the 5-mana slot opens up too many Death Rattles for us. We can play like LR, but we're not going to do that. We can play this guy, though. The Burning Blade Acolyte. 5-mana 1/1 Death Rattle, summon a 5/8 taunt. But that's pretty slow, I would say. You wait until turn 7, and then you still have to like kill this before you get the taunt. So, I don't know, turn 8, you're finally getting your 5/8 taunt. Seems a little bit slow. And outside of the Burning Blade Acolyte, I'm like, am I happy if this is hitting Razorboar or Beastmaster? I mean, I guess it is a lot of stats, but like, are the Razorboar and the Beastmaster even pulling anything at this point? I don't know if they really are. And like turn 7, my opponent probably has a board clear. I don't know. And sometimes you just like die, right? Unless you hit the 3-mana 2/4 taunt heal guy. So, I don't know. I don't really love this card. I know a lot of people think it's like pretty insane, but to me it just feels like kind of slow. I talked about with the Razorboar, it's like kind of flexible how many deck slots you're committing to the Death Rattle strategy. But with this thing, I feel like you have to commit a lot of deck slots to it, and it just doesn't. It doesn't really seem like the best thing Demon Hunter can be doing on turn 7. Like with the other Death Rattle stuff, it's like, okay, maybe this is the best thing I can be doing on turn 2 and 3. Turn 7, I mean, you can be OTKing your opponent with Il'gynoth on turn 7. So, I don't know, I actually don't like this card that much. It has a pretty bad body on it too, 7-mana 3/6. I think I'm a little skeptical that Death Rattle Demon Hunter sees play, and I'm like almost pretty sure that it doesn't play this card. Next up we have yet another Death Rattle synergy card, the Vengeful Spirit. 4-mana 4/4 Outcast, draw 2 Death Rattle minions. So, you obviously can play this in the big Death Rattle deck with the Legendary, But it's kind of weird with the legendary, right? Because like you play this, you draw out 2 Death Rattle minions. You still need to have 3 of them in your deck for the legendary guy. So yeah, I don't even know if this is really that good if you're playing the legendary guy. But I guess it's pretty good if you're playing the Razorboar stuff, right? Especially if like the Razorboars and Beast Tamers are the majority of your Death Rattles, because then you just draw 1 of them, and then you outcast to this, and then you've got your whole chain going, which is nice. But this is a card draw card in Demon Hunter. Demon Hunter does have Demon Hunter like already has a ton of good draw, right? They've got, of course, you know, Skull of Gul'dan, which I'm pretty sure is still in standard. Stilt Stepper's good. Sigil Runner, Chaos Strike, Spectral Sight, Acrobatics. I think all of these cards stay in standard. You can double jump into this, which is kind of cute, I guess. But you can also just double jump into Skull. Yeah, card is a little sketchy, I think. It's also not super easy to outcast a 4-drop, like, on curve. We have seen, like, the Illidari... What, Fellblade? Oh, outcast, not outlast. Silly me. Yeah, we have seen, like, Illidari Fellblade. We've seen Vile Fiend Trainer. These cards have not been great because they're pretty hard to outcast. And if you are outcasting a 4-drop, I think the legendary, the Kurtrus Ashfallen or whatever, is probably better. And I don't even know if you can play that because outcasting is hard. So yeah, I don't necessarily love this card, even in the Death Rattle deck, but I guess the thing is with the Razorboar strategy, like your Razorboar and your Beast Tamer, or Beastmaster, they like dump your hand for you? And if they're dumping your hand for you, then it's like easier to outcast this, I guess, in theory. But I don't know, the whole archetype looks a little bit sketchy. Next up we have Sigil of Silence, 0 mana at the start of your next turn. Silence all enemy minions. This is a weird card. Silence tends to be the kind of effect that you want to play immediately. Like your opponent has a Big Edwin. You don't really want to silence it next turn because you're gonna die. Yeah. I mean, that just tends to be what you want to use silence effects for. Or, you know, your opponent plays Arbor up. You kind of want to silence all their garbage, but not next turn. But this does have its uses. I mean, if you're playing some sort of aggressive Demon Hunter strategy, whether it be, you know, Death Rattle garbage, or weapon stuff, or Battle Fiend, and whatever other random minions you have in play. This can, like, if you're expecting your opponent to block your lethal with taunts, then you just, like, push face with everything, play Sigil of Silence. If they play a taunt, they just die. So, like, that's an interesting application for the card. And, honestly, probably, like, the only realistic, application of the card. But, like, even if you want to do that, can't you just play Kain? I feel like Kain is just a better card. And, yeah, it's from Ashes of Outland, so it's still in Standard. I think with Kain in Standard, there's probably not that much room for Sigil of Silence. The only other real use for it is against, like, I don't know, Gibberling Druid or something, and you know that if you, like, you can't kill their board this turn, but you can kill it next turn, but if they played Power of the Wild, you wouldn't be able to kill it next turn, so you, like, play this so they can't Power of the Wild, and then you can play your Shard Shatter. I don't know, it's just weird. It seems like, for the most part, this is for pushing through taunts, and I feel like Demon Hunter can kind of already do that. Maybe there's some, like, something along the lines of Big Priest that just plays a million taunts, and that deck is, like, tier 1 and you really need to beat it. Then, like, sure, you can look at Sigil of Silence. But, at that point, maybe you just play Lifesteal Demon Hunter and OTK them anyway. I don't think I like the Sigil of Silence too much. Next up we have Fury. 1 mana, give your hero +2 attack this turn. It upgrades at 5 mana to be 1 mana +3, and then at 10 mana it's 1 mana +4 attack this turn. I originally assumed it would be 2/4/6, like the Rogue one, but this is actually 2/3/4. So obviously, Twin Slice died for this, right? Twin Slice was obviously just way too good of a card, so this seems like balanced Twin Slice, basically. But does balanced Twin Slice see play? For the entire history of Hearthstone, Druid has had access to Claw, which in a lot of cases is just this, but way better, right? You get the +2 attack and 2 armor to go along with it. But Druid and Demon Hunter are different classes. Druid is a class that has never really had access to, like, one of the best combos in Hearthstone, which is damage plus damage to kill the opponent. And Demon Hunter's really good at damage plus damage. So I think this sort of effect is just better in Demon Hunter than it would be in Druid. And of course, Demon Hunter also has like reasons to care about their hero getting plus attack. They've got Bladed Lady that you potentially want to activate. And on a smaller note, just like Eldrachi Warblades scales really well with buffing the attack of your weapon. I think Satyr Overseer is a card that would like this, but I think it's rotating. And Blade Dance also. I think Blade Dance is also rotating. So going forward, maybe Demon Hunter doesn't care as much about this kind of effect. But I do think it's like still pretty good for your turn 2 to be Battle Fiend, Fury, kill your opponent's Battle Fiend or whatever, and keep hitting them in the face. Also, of course, this does upgrade at 5 mana. And, 1 mana deal 3, Rogue plays Sinister Strike, so if your deck is that aggressive, that is, like, just a pretty reasonable amount of face damage. It's also just, like, Demon Hunter really appreciates having cheap cards that are easy to dump so they can outcast their, Skull of Gul'dan or whatever. So I think this card is pretty reasonable. It's no Twin Slice, but, a card doesn't need to be as good as Twin Slice to see play. And then finally we have Vile Call. 3 mana, summon 2 2/2 demons with lifesteal. So this is pretty reminiscent of a Druid card, Landscaping. I think Landscaping is actually coming back in the core set. But I think Landscaping is probably better in Druid than it is in Demon Hunter, right? Because Treants are relevant. So, yeah, I mean, Druid can use Treants, and Landscaping is still not a very good card. So I'm a bit skeptical for Vile Call. Of course, they do have lifesteal, and in theory, Demon Hunter, since they hit with their face so much, they probably should care about healing. But, I don't know, in practice it doesn't really feel like Demon Hunter really needs the heals. They've got Eldrachi Warblades, they've got I-Beam, I think both of those are staying in Standard. They've got the Soul Fragment stuff if they really want. They can do, Fellscream Blast plus Moarg Artificer. So I actually don't really think Demon Hunter is that desperate for healing. And I think you'd have to be pretty desperate for healing to play Landscaping in any class really. So I don't really like this too much. Demon Hunter does have some like token stuff, but it doesn't have token buffs, which are what would really appreciate this lifesteal mechanic. So I think even in token Demon Hunter, like, you'd probably rather get 3 1/1s with Rush than 2 2/2s with lifesteal, I would imagine. I think this card's pretty underwhelming. Alright, moving on to Druid. As I said, the rest of the Demon Hunter cards I've already reviewed, so I don't want to go over those again. But Druid, we've got Razormane Battleguard. 2 mana 2/3. The first taunt minion you play each turn costs 2 less. 2 less. So this is pretty similar to Mech Warper, right? The card that kind of like defined mech decks for the time it was in Standard and is basically what made them broken. Obviously this is different. Mech Warper costs 1 less. This is the first one each turn, but it's 2 less. I actually think that might be stronger because you can coin this out on turn 1, and then you can also just play Annoyatron along with it. Turn 1, 2, 3, and Annoyatron. Annoyatron is in the core set. So yeah, that's like really insane. And because this thing itself doesn't have taunt, it like protects itself while you're cheating stuff out with it. So there's like a pretty good chance that next turn you can play another Annoyatron. Or for something else in Standard, we've got Bone Chewer Brawler still. So yeah, Druid can play a couple of nice cheap taunt minions that have good synergy with this. Also, if this like sticks on turn 2, you can play Greybow along with it. I don't know how much I don't know how high I really expect the curve of this deck to go. Like, I don't know if it goes as high as Greybow, since you can play so much cheap stuff with the Battleguard here. But if it does stick, then, you know, turn 3 Greybow with a minion or two in play already is pretty insane. Let's see, this deck can also play Archspore Michifin. I don't know about that since it's kind of a slow card, but like Dreaming Drake is pretty good. Play this turn 3, you get a 2-3 and a 3-4 taunt. Pretty nice. There's all kinds of like bigger stuff you could play as well. Emerald Explorer is leaving, but Teacher's Pet is very playable. Oh man, is it finally Rock Rager's time to shine? Could be. It does a lot of damage. Overconfident Orc looks pretty reasonable. There are also some taunts being introduced in this set that work well with the Battleguard. There's this Toad thing that cares about nature spells, and Druid does tend to have nature spells, or rather their spells tend to be nature spells. We've got this Death's Head Cultist that we talked about a bit with Demon Hunter. Could be pretty playable. And then Druid has like 6 class cards that care about taunt. So yeah, it looks like this is potentially the start of an archetype for Druid. And if it is, this is very much the glue that holds that deck together. This is the broken card in Taunt Druid if you're going to be playing it. So yeah, really, really strong card. I guess next it makes sense to talk about Mark of the Spikeshell. 2 mana, give a minion +2/+2. If it has Taunt, add a copy of it to your hand. So this is resource generation for that Taunt Druid. Seems like that Taunt Druid would probably dump its hand pretty fast, so a resource generation card like this would be pretty good. But probably the most significant thing about this card is you can go like turn 1 coin Battleguard plus Annoyatron, and then like it's turn 1, so your Annoyatron lives, right? So you play Mark of the Spikeshell on it, and then your guy is still in play, so your first taunt this turn costs 0, so you just play the Annoyatron from your hand. So in your first 2 turns, you play Battleguard, 2 Annoyatrons, and Mark of the Spikeshell. Like, that's a really, really solid curve. And yeah, I mean, you can do the same with Bone Chewer Brawler as well, so there's a bit of redundancy on your taunt minion. And this just like scales pretty well later into the game for that deck as well. So yeah, in that deck this seems pretty good. Could this see play in like some sort of slower Druid deck? We've got like the Druid of the Plains that we've seen before. I guess that would be like a pretty good value target for this. There's also like Teacher's Pet maybe. It doesn't have to be like... I'm kind of just thinking of like the beast taunts right now, but you can also play this on just like... You can just play this in some sort of Druid that has like Strongman. Strongman is potentially pretty good with this. Oh man, I guess in theory you could get extra Carnival Clowns with this. I'm not sure how practical that is, but it could happen. I think, yeah, Anubisath Defender is rotating. That would have been pretty good. You can use this to get an extra copy of Greybow in your silly Greybow deck. Which maybe Greybow is just going in this aggro Taunt Druid anyway. So yeah, a lot of applications for Mark of the Spikeshell. I'm pretty skeptical that some sort of like Guardian Animals ramp Druid thing would play this just for their handful of taunts they're already playing. Just seems like they can do better stuff, less situational stuff. And like the bigger your minion is, the less you care about giving it +2/+2. +2/+2 is a lot better when it's like doubling your minion stats, right? So I do think, even though this has some other applications, this is mostly looking at the aggro Taunt Druid thing, but I think it's very good in that deck. So if the Battleguard can carry, this might be one of the things getting carried. Next up, we've got another taunt for the Druid class. Thickhide Kodo, 4 mana 3/5 beast, with taunt and Death Rattle gain 5 armor. So with the Battleguard, this can be a 2 mana 3/5, that's pretty cool. But I'm not really sure this is the type of Death Rattle you want to be playing in that deck. I feel like you're going to be the aggressor in that deck. And even if you're like getting a little bit outsped by another aggro deck, like all your stuff has taunt. So I don't know if you also need like this kind of taunt that also gives you the armor. But maybe you play this in that deck anyway because it's just such a high quality minion, basically. I mean, it's just Sinjin Shield Master with upside, right? It's just Sinjin, but it also gains 5 armor, which is, you know, pretty good. But I think you're probably looking to play this in a slower druid deck. I'm not really sure what that deck looks like though. Like on turn 4 in that kind of druid, you want to be playing Overgrowth, right? Overgrowth is still in standard, and you want to play that on turn 4 every single game if possible. It also has a bit of anti-synergy with Guardian Animals, which I don't think is going anywhere. But honestly, like obviously you want to be hitting 5-cost cards with Guardian Animals, but this is really not that bad off of Guardian Animals, depending on the meta. Like, situationally, 3/5 taunt that gains 5 armor is, like, situationally, that's better than Teacher's Pet, right? Which is currently played in those decks. If the meta is, like, super weapon face smorky, then maybe it's better than, like, Thresher as well. Could be better than Moonfang. This Thickhide Kodo is actually pretty reasonable in a Guardian Animals deck, depending on what's going around. So yeah, there's a possibility it sees play there. There's also a possibility it sees play in Ramp Druid, because, I mean, you don't actually draw the Overgrowth every game, even if you want to. And there's some possibility of it going in the aggressive Battleguard deck as well. So, a card that I'm not convinced will see play anywhere, but could see play in several places. Alright, another Taunt Druid card. Thorngrowth Sentries. 2 mana, summon 2 1/2 turtles with Taunt. So this is obviously very similar to Dreamway Guardians, which currently sees play. But Dreamway Guardians is rotating, so I guess this is just a direct replacement for it in Token Druid. These have Taunt versus Lifesteal. I think Taunt's probably better. Like, sometimes the Lifesteal is useful in aggro mirrors, but like, so is Taunt. And Taunt is just generally easier to abuse, I would say. Like, you can play this on turn 2 or whatever, and it actually protects your Gibberling from, you know, Demon Hunter hero power or whatever. So I think this is actually an upgrade for the Gibberling deck. Does this see play in the Taunt Druid deck? It says Taunt on it, and it's a Druid card. But you can't discount it with the Battleguard, which is kind of sad. But that deck is spamming a bunch of small minions and Oyatrons, Bone Chewer Brawlers. So I would imagine that deck probably has at least some amount of token stuff. You're definitely going to at least be playing Arbor Up in that deck, so this is pretty good with Arbor Up, I would say. Yeah, I mean, I think it's just a good card. It goes in Token Druid. It might go in the Taunt Druid. As far as like a Guardian Animals Druid, probably not. I mean, like, maybe if the meta is extremely aggressive or something, but probably not. It does have a decent matchup against some of Rogue's, like, 1-health stealth minions, though. I guess that could be something to keep in mind. But yeah, just a solid card. Next up we have a legendary, and it is yet another Taunt Synergy card. We have Plaguemaw the Rotting, 4 mana 3/4. After a friendly minion with Taunt dies, summon a new copy of it without Taunt. So that's just kind of a weird effect, right? You summon the minion, it doesn't have Taunt, but it does keep its other effects, right? So it's like a fake silence, kind of, which is, you know, just a weird thing. So, like, you could use this to get back another copy of Greybow that doesn't have Taunt, but it still has the Greybow Death Rattle. So, like, that's a pretty sick value thing you can do with this. You can also just throw this down behind, like, a couple copies of Strongman. They have to get through your Strongmen, and then they give you more Strongmen. Pretty tedious for them to deal with. But I think slower druids probably just don't really have room for this card. Doesn't seem like it does enough when they could be playing Guardian Animals and Clown and whatever else. So I think we're back to looking at that Battleguard spammy tempo aggro deck thing. Does this card make the cut in that deck? Well, it doesn't have the Taunt keyword, so you can't play it for cheap. But I mean, theoretically it's pretty good. You spend your first couple turns spamming Annoyatrons and stuff, and then you play this to protect your board. Your opponent's probably still trying to beat their way through it, and then you just get some extra value out of this. But like, how much do you really need to get out of this? It's a 4-mana 3/4, so you probably need to, I don't know, even if you hit like one Bone Chewer Brawler off this, it's probably, like, you're probably only fine with that. And considering how often this is just a 4-mana 3/4, I think you definitely want your average to be like 2 of those minions, or, you know, like, maybe you need to get like a Dreaming Drake off of it or something. I think it looks a little bit sketchy in that deck. Seems like it's hard to position with it. And, like, if you just play it behind your taunts, then sometimes it just gets hit with a Shadow Word Pain or whatever the appropriate removal is. And I don't think that's a deck where you want to be, like, playing this and then trading off your board. That tends to be really bad, as we've seen from, like, Cult Master and stuff. Tends to not be good to trade off your own board. So yeah, I don't really love this card that much. I do feel like there are multiple Druid archetypes that could be playing several taunt minions, and I just don't really see this making the cut in either direction that the deck could end up going. But it is theoretically a lot of value. Next up we have Guff Runetotem, another Druid legendary. 3-mana 2/4, after you cast a nature spell, give another friendly minion +2/+2. So obviously to evaluate this card we need to take a look at what the nature spells are. And Druid does actually have quite a few of them. Probably most notably with this is going to be Innervate. You just get to play, you know, your 3-mana 2/4 and then you Innervate out, you know, whatever 1-drop you have. Or I would imagine like Nature Studies is not on this list because it doesn't have the cards from the previous year. It just has Core Set and the new ones. But yeah, I would imagine Nature Studies is a nature spell. So Guff, Innervate Nature Studies, give your board +4/+4, or give one thing on your board +4/+4. That's obviously pretty strong. We've also seen, what, Living Seed, Mark of the Spikeshell, and Thorngrowth Sentries. Those are all cards that are like pretty reasonable to play. This is after you cast the nature spell, so I'd imagine if you play something like Landscaping, this can potentially buff the 2/2 you summon, so you don't necessarily have to have a board with this, although that's getting pretty expensive. Probably the more like reasonable application of that would be with Adorable Infestation, which I don't believe is confirmed to be a nature spell, but I mean, it probably is a nature spell, right? So you can go like turn 4, just play Guff plus Adorable Infestation. Your Guff is a 3/5, and then you make a 3/3. That's like pretty strong, right? But generally, Guff does have the downside that you need to have a board outside of the Adorable Infestation. But I would say as Druid, it's like pretty easy to have a board. They have a deck right now that's Token Druid that's, you know, kind of based on having a board at all times. So it doesn't seem like it'll be too hard to activate this guy. I think it mostly just depends on what ends up being a nature spell, but it seems like this deck can pretty easily play Infestation, Nature Studies, Innervate. They play the new Thorngrowth Sentries. And then who knows what else ends up being a nature spell. I mean, Tree Enforcements is, so like Arbor Up is probably even a nature spell. So yeah, it seems like this just slots pretty easily into Gibberling Druid. I don't think other archetypes of Druid really care too much about this sort of effect, but it seems like it slots in pretty easily. I would say with just casting one nature spell successfully, 3-mana 4/6, and that 4/6, or 2/2 of that 4/6 is pretty fast. So yeah, I think this is just a good card in those sorts of tokeny druids. And speaking of tokeny druids, we've got Pride's Fury. 4 mana, give your minions +1/+3. So yeah, I mean, obviously if you have a bunch of stuff in play, this is a lot of stats you can give your board. But +1/+3 is like kind of a sketchy stat line to add on to your minions. We're losing Savage Roar, so Druid is probably looking more for a +3/+1 than a +1/+3. But, you know, obviously that'd be OP. But +1 attack is pretty underwhelming, is basically what I'm getting at. But Druid does still have Arbor Up, so like if you have your 3-mana board, and then you give it all +3 health to protect it so that it can live long enough for Arbor Up, Like, that can be pretty devastating. If you play these cards back to back, it's plus 340 to your board. That's a heck of a lot of stats. But if that's what you're interested in, Soul of the Forest is still in the core set, so I think Soul of the Forest might do what this card does better. I mean, it is going to depend on what you're up against. If you're up against, like, I don't know, Landslide with spell power or something, then, like, maybe Soul of the Forest isn't that good. But, I mean, it seems like Pride's Fury kind of just dies to that anyway. I mean, Pride's Fury, of course, can burst for, 7 damage. But, I don't know, we still have, like, Power of the Wild that does something pretty similar to this for half as much mana. I don't know, I think this card's pretty underwhelming. I think Token Druid, they have enough other board buffing stuff that they can do that I'm not super excited for this card. But maybe it's just, like, maybe you need a 7th card in your deck that does this effect, and maybe it ends up making the cut. And then finally, we have Celestial Alignment. 7 mana, set each player to 0 mana crystals, set the cost of cards in all hands and decks to 1. So, yeah, you make everything cost 1 mana, but everybody has small amounts of mana. So you can play anything, but only one thing the first turn after this. This has gotta be a meme card, right? Like, theoretically, you can fill your deck with a bunch of Scrapyard Colossuses and Plagued Protodrakes and stuff, and then you can get them out for cheap with this. But, I mean, you're probably better off just overgrowthing to do that, right? Seems like you're just kind of, like, you ramp into this and then you throw away the advantage you just ramped into, I guess, is kind of how I'm perceiving it. And, like, the big thing with this card is, on your turn, you set both players to 0. So your opponent gets the first mana crystal, then you get 1, then they get 2. So, like, you're just kind of behind on tempo the whole game. It's like, it's typically just been pretty strong to go first in games of Hearthstone. This is, like, forcing you to go second, and after you've introduced this, like, weird Clown Fiesta mechanic to the game. And, like, theoretically you can play your big, 10 drops or whatever, but your opponent's AoE also only costs 1, so they can just do that, right? So yeah, I think this has got to be a meme card. It seems like it just favors your opponent more than it favors you, is really, like, my evaluation of the card.